All right, we're back, Truth Seeker. We got 2 hours left, and joining us now is our special guest, Tara. She runs the YouTube channel On the Ground with Tara, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Zach, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, you're more than welcome. Thank you for being here. And I recently just met Tara, and I wish I'd known about her channel sooner, but I met her from being out in Buffalo. I saw her moving around with her camera and coming up and engaging with all sorts of people and capturing really interesting moments. And I was grateful to interact with her. And then I checked out her channel and I saw that she's been doing amazing work. And what blew me away is I was still in Buffalo while I was spending the week down there. And I said, wow, look at her. She was just here and now she's down in Uvalde. And then I noticed she's just been all over the place. And I thought, my initial thought was, how is she affording to do this? I was like, I want to. So anyway, I'm glad you're here, Tara, and I'll just let you tell the story of how you got on this path, and obviously you're motivated because you're all over the place documenting everything. So I'll give you the floor to tell your story, how this came to be. How did On the Ground with Tara originate?
Zach, thank you so much for having me on your program. Really, it started basically, my eyes woke up in 2020. I feel like even though I was avoiding politics completely, politics and news were completely thrown in your face. And I'm one of those people who don't like to be lied to. And so as soon as I started paying any kind of attention, I realized how much the mainstream media was lying to us. I know that was a total aha moment for me, even if I had studied journalism in school but never went into it. And so being the curious person I am and the truth seeker, I just started going out to as many protests, really is where it started, and covering what was going on with Antifa from the start, and also from the DC perspective, and just following where trends were going on from the mainstream media, and then seeing it for myself, what is actually going on there. And from a citizen journalist perspective, started broadcasting exactly what I was seeing. So a lot of my stuff is raw and uncut. I live stream so people can see what I'm seeing and then make their own decisions. And a lot of it is also engaging everybody that's on the ground there, like how I even met you. And, when we were in Buffalo, there was definitely an eclectic array of people that were there, from BLM, who flew in from California and from Virginia, to the Black Israelite group that showed up, into the community members. And so we got the narrative that the mainstream media runs with, but it's such a staunch difference to when you're on the ground and you're talking to people, the actual members of the community. And so that's how I really got myself started, being a curious truth seeker. And here I am today.
Indeed. And something that I saw that happened to you just looking through your channel is the assault on you by Antifa, and how you were essentially begging the police for them to help, and they just stood there and watched like they were spectators.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I it was absolutely horrifying. First of all, I had like a mob of 30 people chasing me from Madison Square Park, and I'd been a back the blue person. So when I saw police, I'm like, all right, I'll be fine. Get to them. I ran over to them and they're like 6 feet away. And I came up like yelling, saying, like, I'm being attacked. They can visibly see there's a mob of like 30 people chasing after me. I'd been sprayed with chemical spray, hit with a skateboard, hit with eggs, like everything. And I was begging for help from the police, and they just like pointed away from me and said 6 feet away. And I was like trying to embed myself between the police lines, and they literally like scootered off. And I'm like, this is how I die. I'm like, this sucks, but I'll get through this. But it was absolutely horrifying. And basically what happened was I was on the ground covering what they labeled as an anti-racist march, which being myself a Asian woman, so hashtag stop Asian hate, that really didn't help me that much when it came to these guys. So I refused to turn off my camera, is how it started. And also being a Trump supporter, and this was immediately after January 6th, when I knew I was like, when they first attacked me was first for being a journalist who refused to turn off my camera, and the second they identified my channel and saw that I was a Trump supporter. And then chased after me saying like don't protect her, she supports Trump. And to me, it was right after Gina Carano had posted an image saying this is how the Holocaust started. And so I even drew parallels to that, because you have neighbor turning against neighbor. And so basically people dehumanizing me for my politics, which either left or right is something that should never be done.
Indeed. Were you shocked in the moment that the police didn't help you?
I was. I think at that time, I had been actually, I just hit 1,000 subscribers at that point. So this was among my first live streams. So I was very, very new to the game of doing citizen journalism. And when I was at various protests, also, I'm still even a registered Democrat and have a liberal background and ideology largely. But as I started learning more about my own thoughts and other people's thoughts, I realized, I align more with conservative values just from probably my family background. And being in that mix, also, I would say, on the right side of politics, they're very back the blue, back the blue. And so I've never had a negative interaction with police. Also, I was always taught to be at most respectful to them, even if I'm pulled over, even to always have my hands visible, how to talk and how to properly interact. So I had never had any fear of the police, and I always was under the impression that they were supposed to be protecting us. But I learned very clearly that day, back the blue has limitations, and depending on who is the person in charge and giving those orders, they can very easily be the Gestapo.
Indeed, they can. Have you tried to interview any police about why they don't do anything about Antifa?
Not directly for my channel, but in the assault, so I had talked to police following afterwards, and it did lead to the arrest of two of the people, two of the individuals who had assaulted me, and their excuse was that they didn't know what was going on and they were trying to stay out of it, which was also very discerning for me to hear. That's the reason. I'm like, you just apply a little bit of common sense, that me as a single female all by myself with a mob of 30 people chasing after me, that's not a scenario where, I'm just going to stay out of it. And even with covering Uvalde and knowing that the police were standing down, you can apply a little bit of common sense when the parents themselves were trying to get in, and the police were more aggressive to keeping the parents out than actually going in and stopping the shooter.
And isn't that amazing? Since you had that incident happen to you with Antifa, from looking at your videos, it looks like it hasn't deterred you. It looks like you've still gone out there and tried to document Antifa.
Yes, I'm not the type of person who really backs down. So actually, even when I became political, it was because I made a post when after the Floyd riots had started up. I just, from what I'm seeing, I'm like, this is a domestic terrorist organization, and I made a post about it. And so the vitriol that I received from having that outlook was shocking to me, because I'm like, since when can I not have an opinion? So it wasn't even that if you say something counter, but if you said something outside of breaking, everyone was chanting silence is violence, and if you stepped out of line in any kind of way, it was almost like a form of digital assassination. So friends that I thought were friends from college were saying quite harsh words, or down to anonymous people on TikTok, wishing me death, that I realized something was very, very wrong with what was going on. And that doesn't shut me up. That actually makes me more vocal. So I've just learned, when everybody's pointing their cameras in one direction, I tend to be looking in the opposite way and being like, okay, what are they trying to distract us from?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's inspiring for a lot of people to hear, because a lot of people in this world are afraid to speak out, and they're worried something's bad's going to happen to them if they speak out. But here you are, you've been assaulted, and you've learned, there's really not anyone that's out there that's going to protect you in these situations, but it hasn't stopped you from going out.
Right. And where I get a lot of also my motivation when I started down this line and just being vocal online before I was even on the ground was people were reaching out to me saying that they were not able to speak because they would be facing, being canceled, losing their job. And I'm like, how can we be taking away people's livelihoods and their ability to feed their children based on the opinions that they have? And I'm like, they're trying, whoever's in charge, whoever powers that be, are trying to force us to be staying in line. And so that was very encouraging for me to become more vocal, because I do feel I am in a position where they can't really cancel me, like they can't fire me from my job. So I do have my own business, and they're not going to be able to do anything for me. So that made me be a lot more vocal and to be able to go out there, because I feel like it's now a responsibility to be able to speak for people who are not able to speak.
Indeed. And what you just said there is something I've been explaining to people for a long time. The reason I was able to do this work is because I had my own business and that I didn't have to worry about somebody essentially persecuting me for speaking my own mind and sharing information that goes against the mainstream narrative. And that does happen. I actually, 4 years ago, I tried to go back to my profession of teaching, and I was briefly hired as a elementary school teacher, which is what I used to do. But then I got a letter a little bit later saying they had to rescind the offer. The school district couldn't hire me. And at first they didn't want to reveal why, but then it came out because they didn't like what I'd written in my book, Letters and Numbers. And so that ended up being a blessing in disguise because it kept me on this path. And it's been, as much as I miss working with children, which is what I used to do, I also like speaking out and raising awareness about things that people need to know about.
Absolutely, because what they're actually doing is very wrong, and it's. I never considered myself even a constitutionalist. Like I thought that school violence was because we have the Second Amendment. I'm like, that's antiquated. We don't need, like, why do we need guns? What we'll never have a need for a militia. But really, like, witnessing everything I have and now the understanding I have with what's going on in America, I'm like, I am totally like pro 2A, even with going to be on the ground at the shootings and everything. I don't think restricting our 2A rights is going to be a solution to it. I think we should be approaching things more from a mental health perspective. But also when they were shutting people down to be firing them because of the things that they were saying, I'm like, they really are trying to position us to silence us. And so I understand when people are in a position that they're not able to speak out. So when it comes to like me and you and those people who are able to, we better be shouting out the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I just heard you say a moment ago that you got some criticism from people you used to know in school. Since you've started on this path in the last, I believe you said last 2 years, how have most of your friends and family been? Have they been receptive? Is it a mixed bag, or how's it been?
It's a pretty mixed bag. So my father was always my father was a Trump supporter following the election in 2016. I voted for Hillary as I was living in New York, and I was one of those total crying liberals. I'm like, oh, I never saw it. How could Trump possibly win? And Hillary, Hillary lost. And so when my dad became a Trump supporter, actually so I'm also a Polish citizen, and so and my father's a communist refugee, and he became supportive of Trump because of the 3 Cs initiatives and really like taking out military power from Germany and strengthening Poland in its position to Russia. And so I actually shut down my father's voice to me. And then I realized like how very wrong that is to have that kind of mindset, that when you become so close-minded that you're not even listening to your own father's opinion about something, because everybody's entitled to an opinion. And it's really like to have an effective discourse is you throw all the discussion out there and you allow the best ideas then to rise to the top. But you're not really winning a debate or conversation when you're slicing off the vocal cords of another person. So that's how in my family alone, it's quite divisive, quite honestly. And that's really unfortunate. Like my brother, despite seeing me be attacked by Antifa, is still very much like, isn't Antifa an idea? And I'm like, do you want to see this footage of me infiltrating their little autonomous zone in Portland, and the type of weaponry that they're using and the tactics that they use? Like this is being clearly now documented, not only by myself, but by other independent journalists, that they are like an emerging group here in America, and it should be taken seriously. And so within my own family, it is divisive. I've had friends that I thought that we were very good friends. I'm very pro-life, and I even held my a friend's hand through an abortion when in college, because I love her and support her. She had her reasons, even if it's something that is completely against what I feel. It's still something. I was there for her and supporting her. So immediately when I posted that I was a Trump supporter, she sent me a very short message saying bye and unfriended me and blocked me everywhere. So that's a road that does happen, and it's really unfortunate when people become this closed-minded. Because I'm willing to talk to everybody, because like that's the only way we're going to learn. Like I learned more from people who actually have an opposite opinion from me. And so like it was really amazing when I met you, because I'd never heard of Gematria. So thank you for sharing with me, and I was able to post that onto my channel as well, and then also be able to I want to put the information out there and let people decide for themselves, because people are smart. So people need to be able to have the information and decide for themselves.
100%, 100%. So, and you're doing an excellent job with that with your channel. So what was the thing that made you transition from what you described yourself as a Democratic liberal to now a conservative Donald Trump supporter?
Really, it started off as the vitriol hatred I was receiving online. I did actually think I was going to shut it down, and I deleted a lot of my posts actually from, I think it was June 2020, and decided, I was like, all right, I don't want to be this divisive person, because I want to be a unifier and get everybody talking. But so I shut myself down for 3 days, and it made me really upset. And then I realized, you know what? I am not the type of person to be quiet. So that's when I ended up going out full force, and I started my YouTube channel with going on the ground, because originally my channel was called the Polish American Brotherhood, and that was focused on history, the history between Poland and America. And it was just kind of what I had at the time when I was going out there. And so that's why, like, now, like, truly what I do is on the ground coverage at events and talking to people. So that's how I had gone from doing history to really history in the making. But that's the importance of going out there and talking to everybody. And if somebody's trying to shut you up, like, don't back down to bullies.
100%, 100%. So again, for all the people out there listening who are so afraid to speak up in the world, again, you have a wonderful example right here before you. And I met you in person. You're pretty. You're not the biggest person in the world. You're not physically intimidating, but you're getting out there and you're showing all the courage, and you're not backing down from anything. And again, I mean, had a lot of people been assaulted the way you were and saw that the police wasn't there to protect them, I have a feeling that would have been their last day on the scene, but you got right back out there. And that's the way you got to be. And again, if you guys don't remember, I also got assaulted by Antifa in Portland. My story was I was passing out free copies of my book and trying to educate them about how they're actually fascists and not anti-fascists. And I ended up taking bear spray in the face. And then the police seemed to make a few laps around the block while I was blinded, and they were circling me like sharks and just kept whopping their horn. But, the thing was, Antifa ended up clearing out, and they ended up opening the Barnes & Noble. This happened at the time that Andy Ngo was the big story in the news, and how the Antifa crowd had shut down the bookstore there because they were protesting his book. So I went to educate them also about how they'd sent Andy Ngo's book to bestseller. But it ended with bear spray in the face. Is that Andy Ngo's book?
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta let you know I'm not a fan of the guy. What I also was showing, what I got, the guy claims to be from Portland, Oregon, but has a British accent, and he said he went back to London because he wanted to feel more comfortable, and I'm sure that's where his actual real home is. But the thing about Andy Ngo I got to put you on is, again, you got to ask yourself, where did he get all the Antifa's information to dox them? Where did he get that access to even figure that out? And what I'm often showing is how, again, it's that quote, you got to lead the opposition. And what I was also educating Antifa about that day is how Andy Ngo works for the same federal government that they actually do, whether they realize it or not. But anyway, the more on your journey, you'll start to see more things, and through the Andy Knows of the world. I always laugh when he gets on TV with his British accent, claiming he's from Portland, Oregon. But
I mean, a lot of it also with getting information from Antifa. Like, I've gone undercover in Black Box as well. They are able to pick up if you're not like part of the group, so that is quite dangerous. And I don't recommend it to any of you guys out there as well. But to see like and that's how actually before I was attacked on that day, I was dressed in Black Bloc and able to get through as much of the protests and the marches as I had, and talk to other like Antifa people there. It was only when I refused to turn off the cameras when they turned their sights onto me. And I don't know, because like it was interesting to see kind of like the partnership that was forming between BLM and Antifa, and then learning how they kind of like hijacked more of BLM, but BLM allowed that to continue through, and then would let us through all the riots that we had in 2020. And so I still have my opinions that I'm very vocal about, like on my podcast and everything. But when I'm on the ground, I don't really express my opinion. When I'm on the ground, I'm more interested in listening to what people have to say. And I found that when I had even changed my approach when it came to that, I was able to move more easily between different sides of the protest, as long as they don't identify me right off the bat.
So you're right. And they're both controlled factions, BLM and Antifa, and they are serving the federal agenda. They're bringing their order out of chaos. But what happened to us is a gentleman
Idiots.
a gentleman came out with his wife, and he asked me to sign his book, and I was in the middle of signing his book for him, and Antifa was giving him some grief, and he just said back, he said, "Oh, we just came out here to share knowledge and love, man. It's nothing like that." Well, at that same moment, there was one. Well, there were actually two black. There was a larger man and a younger, smaller woman who were the Black Lives Matter protesters that were there with the Antifa group, and they were okay. But who showed up was another guy who's much bigger. He's like a defensive lineman in the NFL, and he'd been mauling people all that summer in Portland. But when he showed up, what was interesting is the Antifa crowd started screaming at the taller gentleman whose book I was signing for him, who just said back that he just came to share love and knowledge. They started screaming that he called one of the Black Lives Matter protesters the N-word. So they all started circling him, and they had their batons out, and he didn't say anything like that. And the guy who just showing up, who was there ready to fight, he came charging at him. And I jumped between them. I said, "Listen, man," I said, "he didn't say anything like that. We're not here to fight. We're here to pass out books and engage with you guys." And he was just ready to fight. Well, what was amazing is Andy No had a cameraman right there at that exact moment recording, and then he instantly uploaded it to his YouTube channel about what happened, and he put the caption, he said, "These people are over there fighting over my book," which is a completely false headline. And I'm guessing Andy No was alerted that I was going to be there to educate Antifa, because I announced a week in advance that I was going to be there for that day to talk about what's going on with Andy No and Antifa, and see if we could get any sense into these people. Which I knew in a way was kind of a dumb idea, because I'd had a taste of Antifa and Black Lives Matter already. But they absolutely are organized networks working together. They're dirty bad people. The BLM protesters that they hire to be out there, and those Antifa agents. And I think a lot of them are some kind of undercover feds. Some of them,
I would not be surprised about that, because even in covering I remember covering it was the Martin Luther King Day march that BLM had from Barclays Center across the Brooklyn Bridge into Lower Manhattan. And when I was there recording, when they started to battle against the police, basically, and it turned into a riot with like over 30 people being arrested that evening, I was next to, I want to say there were two women that were close by, but they were close to me, away from the battle that was going on. And then all of a sudden, one breaks down, falling down, crying, like flailing her arms and crying hysterically. And then like a couple minutes later, another woman starts doing that. I was right next to them. Like, nobody touched them. They were nowhere near anything, but they started hysterically flailing around. And then so this causes all the cameras to come rushing towards them and start recording them like crying and I don't remember exactly what they said. That they didn't say like I've been attacked, but they were acting in a way, of course, to draw the attention and give the assumption that they were hurt by the police, for instance. So it was. That was the first time I was thinking, like, is this what people call a crisis actress? Because nobody touched them, and they just randomly next to me just fell to the ground and started flailing. And that's something also I had even seen in. I was in Kenosha during the Rittenhouse trial outside of the courthouse, and after the verdict, there was one woman who had a heart attack or a seizure of some sort. And then so they took her away in a ambulance, and literally 30 minutes later, she came waltzing back into the crowd, like acting perfectly fine. So those are instances I like, I'm witnessing for myself being on the ground, and I'm like, hey, this doesn't ring right in my head.
Yeah, manufacturing the scene, manufacturing the narrative. Tara, we're coming up on a quick commercial break. Do you want to stay with us through the break?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, we're back, Truth Seeker. We're joined by On the Ground with Tara. Over the break, left a couple links in the chat. If you want to support her, again, she's doing great work. She's traveling all over the nation, documenting important information for really all eyes to see. And Tara, if I'm not mistaken, this weekend, are you heading to Washington, D.C. for the March for Our Lives rally?
Yes, that is the plan, to be going to DC for the March for Our Lives rally. And then also 2 days after that is there's a shutdown DC protest that's going to be going on at the Supreme Court, which is I guess, pro-abortion. So I plan on covering both of those events. And really, like, the issues I'm interested in following is, of course, the issues that America cares about is right now is going to be abortion. I think that is going to be a defining moment really for our generation, and how we define and value life to be. And then also with gun control, because we got mass shootings going on every single day, and just knowing that the Buffalo shooter and the Uvalde shooter were in the same chat room, like, that definitely begs the question as to, a couple days later, you had the Tulsa incident that happened as well. So I think gun control is going to be another thing that they're going to be targeting at, stripping our rights away.
I did not know that detail about them being in the same chat room, so I'm definitely going to investigate that more. Did it mention what website that was supposed to be on?
I have to go back and check, but I'll send you the link for that. I do believe it was on Discord, but do not hold me to that. I'll have to go back and verify. But the both shooters were in the same chat room, and it's interesting because, like, I think that this generation is going to be facing a whole slew of different mental health issues when these two young men, for instance, like, they're 18. The last 2 years have been in lockdown and pandemic times, and to be doing such horrible, heinous acts. And it's interesting to be a week apart from each other. I did read the manifesto from the Buffalo shooter, and it was absolutely horrific, but it also did mirror a lot of what was in the Christ Church manifesto as well. So he did mention how he wanted to also be shooting Latino, but he was going to be focusing on Black during this attack. So to have a Latino attack occur literally a week later, that I think that is it's an interesting question, or it's an interesting take of that to happen, because they're trying to say, since the Uvalde shooter is Latino himself, that this is not a race a race issue. And it's interesting to see, like, what makes the news and what falls out of the news very fast,
Sure.
because we have instances of Buffalo being a white supremacy issue, but then you have Black supremacy as well, and heinous events that happened, like in Wisconsin, when the man plowed through and hurt, like, 80 some odd people with his car it was the Christmas Day parade. But Biden didn't go and visit that, and that pretty quickly fell out of the news media. So when you watch the stories that hit the mainstream media and how fast they fall off, it's really what's going to be curated to the narrative. And of course, with Uvalde, it's involving children and an elementary school attack. So like, all of these stories, I'm not trying to negate the value of the lives that are lost in these events, but you got to critically question as to what is considered deemed important to the American public. And it's not like the value of the actual lives that's there, but it's to whatever agenda they're trying to be pushing. And you do see, like, how politicians immediately jump onto going at your 2A. Like, for Uvalde to happen right before the NRA convention in Houston, so in the same state, I'm like, that's interesting. Like, Uvalde was absolutely horrible. Like, people were even saying to me, like, how is Tara there so fast? Like, pretty sus that she's there. I was going there to cover the border. I landed in San Antonio, opened my phone, and I had a colleague calling me up and saying, hey, are you by San Antonio by any chance? And I go, funny you should ask. I just landed at the airport. She's like, there's an active shooter going on right now in Uvalde. I jumped in Uber, and I was there on the scene to even see parents being, like, pulled by the police into one direction. I didn't witness when the parents were trying to rush into the school, but there was a group of parents that were being guided by the police towards the school, and so that's the point that I even arrived there. So I mean, it's it's interesting how all of these things end up being like connected, because I was flying into head to Eagle Pass to be covering the end of Title 42, which was then postponed, but I decided I still wanted to be able to visit the border and understand the issues that are impacting our border crisis.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's just one of those synchronicities. You were in the right place at the right time on the right path, I would say. Um, Something interesting. I saw that somebody asked you in one of your, I forget if it was a stream or chat, but somebody said, "Are you sure children died there?" And you said, "Children definitely did die here." And how were you able to confirm that from
I
being
talked
there?
to the parents. I talked to the neighbors around who had children in the school. I talked to some of the kids that witnessed their friends being shot and shot in the face that were in the classroom. So, did I see a dead body? No. I did not. And I did go to I did see a couple of the funerals as well. And I was questioning why the caskets were adults size, because they were not children size caskets. And there was another news article that came out about how there was a person who detailed all of the caskets to be personalized to the children. And the caskets ended up being the wrong size. So unfortunately, another stress onto the parents is that the children didn't have the right size caskets, and so they were buried in adult size. But when I saw the caskets initially, I was like, wait a second, that's adult size caskets. But that's what I had heard from talking to other people that were on the ground, that they had made a mistake on the size of the caskets. But my information comes from talking to the neighbors, talking to two children that had witnessed their friends being shot in the classroom.
Did you meet anyone that knew the shooter?
I didn't meet anybody who knew the shooter. I one neighbor I had interviewed was like coworkers the with the mom's cousin, it's just down the line. So I didn't meet anybody who knew the shooter. So my information on the shooter himself is just basically what we see on mainstream media itself. But I was hoping, like, with talking to people, like literally, I was just walking around the neighborhood trying to see who was willing to talk. And people there were willing to talk. Like, I passed one man and I could see the sadness in his face. And it's challenging to ask people their story, but at the same time, as a journalist, it's important, because at the end of the day, like if this doesn't get documented, there everybody deserves to be remembered. And so I talked to one man. When I saw the expression on his face, I was like, "I'm sorry, sir. Did you lose somebody?" And then he said that he had lost his goddaughter, and he was on his way to the to meet with his to meet with her grandmother. And then so I continued walking around the neighborhood. I was trying to see how close I can get to the grandmother's house, because the grandmother's house that he had shot is also in the neighborhood adjacent to the to Robb Elementary School. And so then on my way back, I saw him also consoling an elderly woman, and I walked up to her and I just told her, like, "I am so sorry for your loss." And she showed me pictures of her grandchild, and she was the child that called 911 from the classroom when the shooter shot her in the face for calling 911. So my information is based on talking to the families that have lost their loved ones.
Okay, well, that is very good to know. The thing from not being there and just looking from the outside, I'm so often talking about the number 19 in these incidents, and they said 19 police stood down in the hallway while 19 children were killed. And I didn't share it with you when we talked in Buffalo, but 19 was a big number on that shooting as well. The shooter was born exactly 19 days before they opened the store on the 190th day of the year, which is the 19th triangular number. That means if you add 1 through 19 together, it equals 190. Also, if you add up the 19 ages of the victims in Uvalde, it again adds to 190. And that number is symbolic. It represents chaos. And again, the motto of the Masons and the Jesuits is order out of chaos. And in the Buffalo shooting, it was exactly 19 weeks before the mayor's birthday. And I don't know if you talked to the local people of Buffalo about Byron Brown, but they hate him and they don't think he really won the last election because he didn't even win the primary. So he was a write-in candidate, but then somehow defeated the candidate that the city actually wanted. And like I tell people, in the United States of America, politicians are not elected; they're selected. And we can get into that with Biden and Trump if you want to, but. again, this 19 number is a very ugly number. Of course, on 9/11, they said there were 19 hijackers, and somehow the FBI, they couldn't recover anything, but they recovered the 19 terrorist passports from the rubble. And we've been in our community, we knew that 2020 was going to be a rough year because we knew it would be 19 years after 9/11 and the 19 hijackers, and then it ended up being COVID-19. But the point is, they use this number a lot. And so I'm looking at it this way, from what I understand. That school was on Highway 83, runs through the town of Uvalde. It's the 830 area code. The NRA shows up at a building where the convention is named after a man who died in 83, whose name Gematria also equals 83, just like Matthew McConaughey equals 83. And they've talked about the Texas Tower Sniper at the University of Texas, which of course was established in 1883. What 83 is in Gematria is it's the word murder. And the song Murder by Numbers by the Police came out in 83. If you don't know the Police, it's the band with Sting. They sang Roxanne, Every Breath You Take, those songs. They have an album called Synchronicity, but on that song, there's a pretty creepy album. And Sting takes a lot of pride in that song. And Sting lost both of his parents when he was young, about a month apart in his early days of his singing career. But the lyrics to the song is how killing is as simple as ABC is 1, 2, 3, and how killing is the sport of the elected. And you just think the elected, politics, on the backs of all of these politicians jumping on right away looking for legislative changes. So what else is creepy is, I don't know if you saw Matthew McConaughey, his thing yesterday.
Press conference yesterday.
About the green Converse. But he actually put out a book called Green Light, exactly on the nose, 83 weeks before the shooting. And he put that book out on Kamala Harris's 56th birthday. And on the campaign trail, she was known for wearing Converse. So, I mean, that's what we do in our community. We're always showing how it looks like this stuff is planned out long in advance, how these things are actually being done by the state. And as I've said for years, it's hard to tell if people are really getting killed or not because we're not there. But if people really are getting killed, then it looks like it's the state that is responsible for the executions, whether they be children or adults or whatever happens in the latest ritual from Buffalo to Uvalde. And with regards to the 8-3 thing, they just said that the shooter cased the store on March 8th. The narrative in Buffalo is that the shooter cased the store on March 8th, the date that, of course, can be written 8/3. And it doesn't sound like that's the full extent of the story, because I don't know. Did you get to talk to the man there, Grady Lewis?
I don't know Grady Lewis. No, I didn't talk to him.
If you look up his name, he's gotten a lot of it. He's probably the most recognized interviewee at the Buffalo store. And I spent the whole week there, so I got to talk to Grady a lot. But Grady's testimony says that the shooter was there the day before the shooting, and he had a nice conversation with the shooter, and he was a shy, bashful boy the day before who seemed like an intelligent young man. So he was really surprised that the next day he turned into a mass murderer. Now, the media has really shied away from that narrative, and they keep making it seem like the shooter had only been there on March 8th before the shooting. And another thing that Grady pointed out to me while I was there is he said, you see those two people over there? And they were dressed in khakis and a collared shirt. They were two white men. He said, those are the same people that were with the shooter the day before. So he's like, I don't know why they're still hanging out there. And I said, that gives me a bad feeling. And again, I maintain that all of these things are government operations, but from what you found out, I mean, that's really sad to hear. And again, I find it funny that people are asking to there's people advocating for disarming the populace, when here we're talking about a school shooting where essentially the authorities, who people want to have guns, stood down and allowed something to become a lot worse than it likely would have been.
Absolutely. I mean, from the perspective that I'm looking to bring into this conversation is I'm a complete newcomer to Gematria, and so I can just attest to like what I'm seeing on the ground. And I could tell you, like, when I was there, though, there was definitely something weird going on from the first. I was editing my footage. I'm gonna put out like a 5-part docuseries on Uvalde, but the first, I want to say it was the sheriff. I'm not exactly sure. I'm gonna have to go back and check my notes, but his first statement about what was going on in the school, about how police had gone into the school, that they were shot at by the shooter and had engaged. of course, like then the following next day on every single press conference, they kept changing the story. And so a major theme that we have with Uvalde is the timeline of events. So time is very salient, especially in this, because the timeline of when people went in, whether or not they did actually go in, there's 12 minutes from the point that the shooter had crashed his car to when he was inside of the classroom. And then when he was inside of the classroom was like 73 minutes is what they were saying. And so I do, like, as a layperson who doesn't know nothing from nothing when it comes to gematria, I can tell you that there is a theme when it comes to time or numbers and how that's even being documented. And the people who are asking questions, like I had shared with you that my colleague was invited to one of the funerals when she had connected with the aunt during and had interviewed her. And then so when we got to it was Hillcrest the funeral home, which is the one that is located close by the school where part of the shooting had occurred before the shooter went in. So at Hillcrest, when we got there, we saw that there are signs saying no journalists, no media. And so we were trying to find the woman that had invited us, because we didn't want to be disrespectful to the families by any means. We were able to talk to like the uncle, and he was giving us direction where to find the aunt. But when we weren't able to find her, we we're like, let's go to their office and just like clear and let them know, because it's pretty obvious that we're not family or even from the community. This is a community that's 16,000. My high school is 4,000. This is a tiny community. So it would be very obvious that we're not related to the child that was being buried. And so when we went into the office, the woman that we had first spoke to, she told us she had to go check with the funeral director, and she told us to just sit and wait in the office. And we didn't want to be disrespectful, so we said, we have no problem waiting outside. Like our truck's outside, we'll go wait there. If somebody can come and send us word whether or not like it's okay, we'll come back. And then so we were on our way to the car, almost at our vehicle, and the funeral director came chasing out, basically, out at us and threatened us with a trespassing charge, saying that if we showed up again, we would be charged with trespassing, and which was very aggressive, very unnecessary. We volunteered to go outside. We had proof that we were invited. So that was like very unnerving. And then in talking to other journalists, they were talking about their interactions, because everybody was okay interacting with the family. Families actually wanted their stories, from my perspective, and the journalists I talked to, they wanted their stories out there and documented. You have a woman who saved 2 of her kids, who was threatened with obstruction of justice if she spoke to the media about how she went into school and saved her kids. So there are authorities there that don't want the media asking questions, and they're bullying the media to be getting out. It started becoming every day like more of a hostile environment for media and journalists to be present. You even had one journalist who was basically roughhoused by a group of bikers that were supposedly asked by the police to be guarding the funeral. And so it's because the police doesn't have the right to tell you as a journalist, oh, you can't be here. This is public space, and freedom of the press is a First Amendment right. So that order cannot come from a police officer. So I almost felt, and this is me just looking at things from a common sense perspective, I'm like, did they engage like some regular people who can then, act as a form of bullying other people out, because the police are not, they're not allowed to bully out the press. So they got regular citizens to then be able to bully them out. And so that also begs the question. I'm like, people, of course, need to act in a way that's respectful to the environment and the grieving families, and what's personal and what's not. But from what I had witnessed, like I didn't see press being like overzealous and everything. Like they were in the designated area that was really far from any of the from even the funerals, and then authorities were blocking the view. So they were blocking completely the view of the casket, which when I saw the casket being a large casket also like drew the question, but I was confused for myself. So I'm like, why is it necessary to completely obstruct the view of anything that's going on? And then also like even in the school, usually I get it. It's an active scene that's going on for a crime scene investigation, but the media we were delegated to be very, very far, very, very, very far across. And so so in terms of any kind of documentation that could even come about from this, I'm like, it's not something that can be even released on a later date because it was completely zilch for what can be documented. And so when we're not allowed to document things, that also begs the question of like, what are you trying to hide?
Indeed, that just listening to your story, that's what it sounds like. Somebody's trying to hide something. They don't want information to get out. They only want the authorities there documenting the cases. They want it portrayed on TV. And
the authorities there are not even cooperating with the when I did the ride along with the patrol at the border, he was explaining how Texas has a procedure where they'll have independent reviews whenever there's shots are fired that involve police. And so sometimes the Texas Rangers will get involved with that. And the different teams that I had seen, units that I had seen when I arrived at Robb Elementary, you had already the FBI was there. I got on the scene around 5:30 p.m. And so they already had the National Guard, they had the FBI, they had all of the different units that were there. And I'm like, wow, that was a quick response. Like, where did they come from? And then it was, it's not that far from the border. So for border control, patrol to be there, that wasn't not strange to me. But before having all of the facts for the story, it seemed like everybody was already there.
Interesting. And this is why it's so valuable to have people like you on the ground to get the alternate perspective. And again, I'm very grateful for what you're doing. And I know a lot of other people are in this world. And by the way, if you feel like your channel should have grown a lot more than it has, I'll tell you this. Had you started doing this in 2013, 14, 15, my guess is you'd probably have over 100,000 subs right now. It's very hard to grow a channel in the post 2017 area. I've been deleted 20 some times since June of 2017. And I've sniffed 100,000 subscribers 2 times and been deleted. And for the last 2 years, I'm having trouble getting channels up to 20,000 subs. So keep doing what you're doing. Your audience is probably a lot bigger than you know. I just wanted to ask, do you mind sharing how much you've spent on your travel expenses doing this over the years? And just
I've spent a lot, even just in this trip for Uvalde. Like, I was not planning on staying out as long as I was, and then of course with everybody rushing to town, we were like, it was upwards of like $300 a night for a hotel. So sure. It was a very expensive trip. I did contemplate like maybe I should not continue and head home, but I just muscled through. I do have my own business, so I do self-fund, and I'm hoping that with continued growth on this work, it can sustain itself. But I'm gonna keep going through. I'm gonna keep plowing through with it. But I spent a pretty penny. I definitely spent a pretty penny just in Uvalde alone. I was a world traveler before this, so this actually kind of just coupled onto that, because before I used to be a management consultant in New York, and so I was in the corporate world for about like 7 years, and I just did not fit being at a desk job, and I didn't like, if I'd rather make money for myself than make other people wealthy. So if I'm going to use my brain, it's going to be for myself. And then but I needed to take a pause and go find myself. So I backpacked the world for about 2.5 years in that time, and then I've now traveled to almost 60 countries. And in that time period, I started my own business. And so one of the things that made me also a supporter of Trump is like, I felt that the economy was doing very well, and the business I started then was able to thrive. So it's something I'm like, regardless of his personality or whatnot, like I don't care about agreeing with that. I care about what's good for the economy and people's well-being. So now the difference basically is I go to where I go to where stories are at in a sense with a camera. So it's coupled onto my already desire to travel, but and now I'm really curious about unearthing the truth. And also, like, honestly, in the long run, I am interested in running for political office. I would like to run for Congress one day. I'm not at a position that I'm anywhere near ready for that, because I need to have an understanding of the issues and come up with solutions that I could present. And that's at the point that that's at the point that I would start to run for congressional office, because I'm not going to go and campaign without having solutions. And I feel like these politicians, they may visit a community, but then they don't even talk to the people. And to me, that's a shame, and not what should be happening from an elected official, or, if you're put in there. So hopefully they'll put me in there, because and I'm not going to lose myself in the process, because like the experiences that I'm having is a lot of it is for personal growth. And I know that even being out there, like if I'm based in Florida, if I was told that Uvalde was going on, it's not something I would fly to and have covered. I felt like I'm a religious person. I felt like I was meant to be there. And so with everything kind of lining up, and the ironic thing to that is I actually lost my credit card and debit and ID when I was in Buffalo. So that delayed my trip to go to be going to Del Rio, and it postponed it by 2 days. So I ended up flying into San Antonio on that day instead of flying into Del Rio days before. So in terms of following life paths, this is the path that life's taking me. And I feel that this is the purpose that I'm meant to serve, and it's meant to just show the world what I'm seeing myself, and ask the questions and talk to people maybe that necessarily wouldn't be speaking, and just get the information out there. So I'll put the information out there. I'll leave it to you guys to be connecting the dots, and so together we all can work as a team.
All right, we're back. True Seeker. It's the final hour of the show. If you tuned in late, we are joined with special guest On the Ground with Tara. Be sure to subscribe to her YouTube channel. If you do that, search On the Ground with Tara, Tara. You'll be sure to find it. She's doing wonderful work. She's out there pounding pavement and getting alternate perspectives to pretty much all the big stories that are happening in the news. And she's very brave as well. So if you tuned in late, be sure to rewind the stream later. But we're happy to still have her on. And the one thing that a lot of TFR listeners would really like about you, Tara, is that you support Trump. I'm kind of the black sheep of this network. I do believe I am the only person on the network who is not a Trump supporter. And again, for just so you know, I don't support any politicians. My whole thing is we need to burn the federal government to the ground. But you know what? If we had people like you in office, I'd have a different perspective. So,
and that's the thing. I think we do need to get like regular people into office that, this whole journey that I've had over the past 2 years with being a citizen journalist and putting the content out there. I've changed my approach a lot, because before, I guess people would call me an activist. And then now, it's not that I'm even neutral now. I have very clear opinions on everything that I do state, but I'm more willing now to talk to people who have different views than I do, and trying to document that as well. So that doesn't, sometimes that doesn't fare well on my own channel. They're like, why are you talking to this person? I'm like, let's listen to what they're saying. Let's listen to what this other person is saying, because everything's getting so discombobulated in America that it's very much, everyone is now saying like, oh, you can't talk to people who are trying to kill you, which is true. I mean, if Antifa's trying to kill me, it's going to be a bit hard to convince them not to and have a conversation with them. So I'm not saying that they're wrong, but in terms of the position that I'm looking to put myself in is to be still more of a bridge. I still believe in that ground, how polarized everybody's going from one way to the other. Like I have friends who would be, in a sense, like fascist or Antifa beliefs one way or the other, and we'll have conversations. That's different from people who will go and hurt you. Like I don't believe that anybody ever has the right to physically assault a person for whatever beliefs or thoughts or perspectives that they want to go and talk about, nor should they ever be deplatformed for it as well. So when people say like, oh, they're inspiring. And I just saw like for Jack Posobiec, for instance, like the Southern Poverty Line, like included him there. And then Andy No they're looking to include him there. Like what I question about the Southern Poverty Line, like they're going after everybody that's on the right wing side, but there are also characters on the left wing side. So you have to look at things from like the bias that they're presenting as well. And it's we all have that cognitive dissonance that rings in you, and you're like, there's something not wrong here. So I just encourage people to look the opposite direction that you're being told.
Absolutely. Do you want to? You probably haven't seen this before. I want to show you a Trump commercial from 5 years before he was elected in 2016, and get your take on this.
All
And
right.
if you've seen this before, let me know. But this is a Serta mattresses commercial called "Counting Sheep." Do you recall anything like this with Donald Trump?
I haven't seen this commercial, but I know the sort of mattress one.
Oh, okay, here, let's check this out. And I just want to see if anything stands out to you about this commercial. So here we go.
So what do you think of my Trump Home mattress collection by Serta? Finally, the same luxury and comfort I demand in my hotels.
Oh, they'll never count sheep again.
Listen, why don't you come work for me?
What do you have in mind?
Something you were born to do.
Welcome to room 9.
Looking good, number 9, looking good.
Where's your dignity?
Save now on this Trump Home Luxury Suites mattress during the Serta Luxury Suite.
Okay, so is there anything that stands out to you about this commercial in light of the night Trump was called the winner of the 58th presidential election?
You know, with our discussion earlier about 19, I mean, that's the first numbers that I see there too. Because like, even though this commercial is targeting number 9, then the next scene over shows 1. So that's, that's fresh in my head for the number 19. Recalling the night that he won the election, I just remember watching the polls come in and turning off the TV early because I was like, oh man, like how is this possible that Trump's winning? Like, I just didn't have time to pay attention to what was going on. So I'm like, he's a racist, like he's a sexist. So like all the isms is just something I blanketly like tossed onto him and dismissed him.
Sure, and it really did take a toll on people who didn't like him because if you recall, the election was on November 8th. That was the Tuesday, and they called it for Trump in the early hours of November 9th, 11/9. And can you make out that the sheep in the background has an 11 on it?
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's 11/9. And if you go back and look at what he was wearing on election night, he's wearing the exact same suit and tie. And this commercial's from about 5 years before the election. And again, counting sheep and
I do think that the even in for instance, like Marvel movies, they had images of like the coronavirus in the background of when what's his name, Captain America was running through Times Square, and so that was a flash in time for a different. I feel like whoever's in charge, they tend to gloat about what's oncoming, and then so when you look back in hindsight, even in our media depictions, you can clearly see it there. So now knowing what I do now, like it's very clear to me, seeing 11, 9, 19.
Sure. So, and again, he's wearing the same suit and tie. And again, 11/9, like the date they called the election for him. And do you remember what happened in history on November 9th, 27 years before 2016?
No.
That was the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Oh, yeah.
And Ronald Reagan, who said, "Tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev," he also came up with the campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." That's when it was first year.
Yeah. I remember hearing that Reagan was the one who initially came up with "Make America Great Again."
Right. And the other parallel with Reagan and Trump is they were longtime Democrats that became Republicans as politicians. Reagan was always a Democrat as an actor, and then he became the 33rd governor of California and converted to the Republican Party. And Trump was pretty much a lifelong Democrat until Obama became president. Do you remember the White House Correspondents' Dinner where Obama joked that Trump would be the next president? Did you ever see that?
I remember the clip of that, yeah.
So that White House Correspondents' Dinner, that the way it fell that year was exactly 45. And do you recall that at the end of this, he said, "Looking good, number 9, looking good"?
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is 45 is the 9th triangular number. So if you add 1 through 9 together, it equals 45. And what else is interesting is in Gematria, Berlin Wall equals 45. So we get Donald Trump, president-elect number 45, on the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall when he'd done this commercial 5 years before the election. And again, I mean, there's a lot to it. In 2015, before you liked Trump, if you recall the first Republican debate, there were about 20 candidates. It was kind of Trump and Jeb Bush going back and forth at each other, and Ben Carson was out there, and they were kind of the ones getting the most attention back then. But When Trump first took the stage and spoke for the very first time, the debate was on Fox News, and they put up a stat, and it said, according to Forbes, Trump is the 133rd richest man in America. And I did a video that day, and I said, how interesting that Forbes, as Trump first speaks in his start of running for president, they say he's the 133rd richest man, because in Gematria, White House equals 133, so does government, so does president. And I said, he did do an interview with Oprah back in '88 about, she asked him if he'd ever want to run for president. And it's interesting because Oprah equals 58, and Trump announced that he was running from the 58-story Trump Tower, and then he won the 58th U.S. presidential election. But this is the kind of stuff that we've been looking at for years. And that's why we saw that it was easy to see that it was going to be Joe Biden as number 46, because the word Catholic's 46, and there's 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament, and JFK was killed at 46. And this election was exactly 46 weeks after Pope Francis's birthday, and Pope Francis equals 59. This was the 59th election. Interestingly enough, John F. Kennedy is also 59. And you might recall that in 2020, at the beginning of the year, on April 6th, 4-6, Mauve Kennedy from the Kennedy family, her and her child were found dead in what was reported as a canoe accident on 4-6 in the year that we end up getting number 46. And again, her relative JFK was killed at 46. So again, for all the people who like Trump, I'm pretty sure he's going to win the next election, because there's only been one president to have a split term, and that was Grover Cleveland. And his first convention in 2016 was in Cleveland. And there's been an article written about all the parallels between Trump and Cleveland, and everything from their weight to their wives. So I think the script does tell us that Trump is coming back. But I heard everything you said before about why you like Trump. The economy was a lot better. 100%. Everybody was doing better when Trump was in office. But what I explain to people is these presidents, they're figureheads, and they're put up there to serve as symbols. And the things that happen in the time of their presidency, they're really like Joe. For example, for people to, am I mistaken, Tara? From something I heard you say, it sounded like maybe your undergrad is accountancy.
No, I studied political science for undergrad, but I have a master's in enterprise risk management, and that's why I ended up working in.
Okay, I thought for some reason.
So I did work for a firm that does accounting, though. So
okay, I heard something about accounting watching one of your videos. Okay, anyhow, you might know this anyway, but the main thing that drives inflation in any economy is the printing of money. So anytime you print more money, there's inflation, and usually it should be bang bang. Now Trump, he printed more money than any other president in a single term. And there should have been record inflation in his term, but they prolonged it until Biden got into office, and now they're putting the inflation on Biden and the Ukraine conflict, and really, like, this stuff doesn't make any sense in terms of economics 101. And again, I'm trying to explain to people that our elections are completely rigged and manipulated. Our markets are rigged and manipulated. The nightly news is rigged and manipulated. Again, it says on our currency, "In God we trust." You have to believe in this currency. And really, the only reason it has any true value is because people believe in the currency, and it still has value to them. Again, Steve Mnuchin, who's a Skull and Bones member, sorry, my voice. Steve Mnuchin, who was the Treasury Secretary under Trump, I lost my voice. He became the first president to audit Fort Knox, and he did that on the day of the total solar eclipse, the first of its kind in 99 years. And in alchemy, gold is represented by the sun. So on the day that the sun was blacked out totally in the U.S., the first eclipse of its kind in 99 years, we have the Treasury Secretary auditing Fort Knox for the first time in forever. And at the same time, they put up the headline about how he lined his house with dollar bill wallpaper. Again, these people are making fun of us. Again, it's that George Carlin joke about, there's a big club and you're not in it. And, Trump recently, he's taking credit for Dr. Oz winning the election in Pennsylvania. Well, what most people missed is that election was on May 17th, which is the anniversary of the publishing date of The Wizard of Oz. And so, again, I love that you aspire to run for Congress, and I hope you do win the day you do, because we do need good people in office. But what my suspicion is unless you're in the club, it's
I know.
really hard to make it in there. And
It's the same thing as in like in Hollywood, because with all, you know, with all the things that they do there, if you're not in the in club, you're never going to get the roles. So it isn't like, I just want to be part of the solution. And so that's part of like the growth process that I'm in. And I feel like if you're in a position of power, you're able to, but it's also very clear that the people who are in the position of power, they're not even in true power, even when it comes to our presidents. Because like I do feel like a lot of things are by design, just the way that they flow. That's the gut instinct that I would have. For things to happen right before timing, it's uncanny. Even now, like we have a huge caravan that's coming through from the south of Mexico, like between 10 and 15,000. They're saying it's one of the largest caravans. They just started doing the J6 like hearings this week of a couple of the you know, headliners, like with Enrique Tarrio with the Proud Boys. His hearings have begun as well. And it's like, so this week we have hearings for J6, but then a caravan's coming through. And then I remember following the caravan back in October, because I was planning on flying over to Mexico City when it hit there, and then following the caravan from Mexico City up to the border. It disappeared. I'm like, where did this caravan go? It just like disappeared. So whenever something's happening, that's why I say, I'm like, you just got to look in the opposite direction.
You bring up Tarrio. Are you aware that he's an FBI informant?
Yeah. That's a publicized like news, and I do know him personally, so it's not something he's negated when I asked him.
So I mean, that does seem to lead to the fact that, okay, if he's an FBI informant and he works for the government, and then he's supposedly one of the instigators of the Capitol insurrection, as they're calling it, it leads to the idea that the leadership is working for the government. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I just think of the because like there are a lot of people who just followed in the mob with the mob mentality and got caught up when it came to J6. I was there at J6, and so you have people who it's so simple for somebody in the crowd to be like, follow me and go this way, and people will just go. And so how perfect is it for this event to occur to then for them to use this as an example of if anybody does any form of an insurrection, like you will lose your life completely. So you know, people who trespassed, it's a misdemeanor charge of trespassing, they're facing like 20 years. So this was to be sending a message to the public, to the people, like don't even think about doing an insurrection. And like, you know, my opinion is that it was staged to in order to send this message out, unfortunately.
It was absolutely staged. And I had my most successful video that I've had in about a year and a half on before it happened. Everything I predicted that was going to happen that day. Are you aware of Georgetown's Transition Integrity Project from June 12th, 2020?
No, I'm not.
So this is something to look up. So they did a simulation at Jesuit Georgetown that Biden would narrowly defeat Trump. Trump would refuse to step down, saying the election was stolen from him, and it would lead to deadly violence and chaos in the streets of America. And I mean, look at the way they did the election. We all go to bed on election day with Trump with a solid lead. It looks like he's won re-election, but then we wake up in the morning and all these ballots have poured in overnight, and now Biden's leading all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so how could anyone look at that and not feel like it was rigged for Biden? And I maintain that they did it that way on purpose to create this polarization and division and this feeling of being cheated and our democracy falling apart. But again, I got to rewind the tape on people. I was 17 years old in 2000 when the election came down to Florida, and they told us for a month that the election between Bush and Gore would come down to Florida, and sure enough, mm-hmm. It did.
Yeah, I remember the hanging Chad votes in West Palm.
And I just had to laugh at the time because his brother was the 43rd governor of the state. He became the 43rd president, and his dad, of course, was the 43rd vice president. And the two that were president both went to Yale and Skull and Bones, and in Gematria, Yale's 43. Florida also equals 43. And I didn't know Gematria back when I was 17, but that's why I've never voted, because it just seemed like such a joke to me. The Republican president comes down to the state where his brother's the governor, mm-hmm. and just the whole way it unfolded. And then, after Bush, then it's Obama. It's Barack Hussein Obama. after the first, what was it, last 7 years of fear mongering about Osama and Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Nonstop fear program about Islam, and then you get a president with an Islamic name. I'm like, okay, they're playing with us. Plus, I was saying, okay, the Tupac song "Changes" came out a decade before this election, where we still ain't seen a black president, and now we have hope and change. So anyway, I've just been trying to get people to wake up. Before I even knew Gematria, that games are being played. We're being manipulated. 9/11 was, of course, my big wake-up call with numerology, because, again, you had flight AA11 in New York, the 11th state, on the 11th of the month, where the building looked like a massive 11. And I just knew there was something about numbers, but it took me about 10 more years to figure out what I now educate about. But, yeah, so anyhow, what are your thoughts on the idea that all of our elections could be rigged? Does that seem something that's within the realm of possibility to you?
I do think so, and I think this is the first year, like, when you say it was put really in front of us to anger us. I do think that elections have been rigged in our past, and now people are just paying attention to it because it was so blatant, like, when they put it in front of us, and to go through the hearing process. I went to a lot of the Stop the Steal rallies from Georgia to Phoenix, and then I paid attention to all the information that was being presented. So anybody who was watching those hearings, like, then to have them not even audit. So as a former auditor, like, you have a business process that's in place, like, you should still audit it, even if things are going according to process. The fact that, like, our elections are not audited, like, from even years before, like, this is something that should be a no-brainer, to always audit our elections, but they never want you to go back and check. So that makes me question everything that's happened in the past. And so I questioned it this time around for the first time, but knowing that an audit process has never been in place for the past, I'm like, even if there's all the reassurance that something is correct, like, an audit is an extra control to make sure that it happened correctly. And it's so has our, in my opinion, yeah, I agree.
Okay, I got to ask you a couple more things about Trump. Now, are you aware of Clade X, the pandemic simulation of May 15th, 2018?
No, you're going to have to educate me on this one.
Okay, are you aware of Event 201, the follow-up pandemic simulation that the same group did?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Clade X was put on May 15th, 2018. The participating institutions were the Johns Hopkins University, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna. So they did Clade X exactly 666 days before they declared the pandemic on March 11th. 666, which, of course, in the Bible is the number that you must accept if you want to buy or sell. And there was a lot of, you got to have either the mask on. And it's funny how the word mask is just one letter off from Mark. M-A-S-K, M-A-R-K, right?
Mark of the beast.
You had to have the mask on, or in some cases, you had to have the vaccination.
Vax passports.
And what's interesting is there's another cipher in Gematria. We just count the alphabetic order by 6. So A is 6, B is 12, C is 18, D is 24. Just, it's like that. If you write out vaccination that way, it adds up to 666. So does the word mandatory. They're both 666. And so anyhow, Clade X was exactly 666 days before the pandemic was declared, and it was on May 15th, 2018. Now, May 15th is the one day on the year that you celebrate Mercury, the planet Mercury. And of course, that's the interesting ingredient in vaccines, Mercury. Do you know what day Trump declared Operation Warp Speed?
Was it that day?
2 years later, May 15th, 2020.
It's interesting also with Mercury. Like, I follow a little bit with astrology. So whenever you have, like, whenever it's like Mercury rising, so that's the time period that you shouldn't be making any important decisions or business contracts or anything, because everything goes out of haywire during this time of astronomical, like, alignment.
Right.
The Mercury seems to be quite salient. So it being a primary poison that's inside of this vaccine it's not surprising. And the amount of times that they've lied about what's inside of it, that to me is very discerning, and why, like, it's not something that I would want to put in my body.
Indeed. And sadly, we can only say so much about that, on this platform. They just love to take people down if you talk too much about it. But here's the other thing. Did you see what vote they're going to have on Trump's birthday on June 14th?
What's the vote? Is it Roe v. Wade?
No,
That's coming up pretty soon. So
on Trump's birthday, they're going to approve the vaccine for 6 months and above. And what's interesting about Trump's birthday this year is it has 42 date numerology. And the reason that matters is when you use the cipher that we use the most, vaccine equals 42. And they've done a lot of rituals with the vaccine in 42. For example, the coronavirus vaccine went live in the U.S. on Bill Gates's 42nd day of his age. And if you don't know this about Bill Gates, he has the exact same birthday as Jonas Salk for the polio vaccine. And the day that Elvis Presley got the polio vaccine on live TV, which was October 28th, 56, that was Jonas Salk's 42nd birthday, and it was Bill Gates' first birthday. And it was exactly 42 weeks after Elvis's birthday, who sadly would go on to die at age 42. But they've done a whole lot of rituals with the vaccines and the approval of the vaccines for the different age groups at 42. It's just been a recurring theme that we've been talking about through all of this. And now the final approval is going to be for 6 months and older on Trump's birthday on a date that happens to have 42 numerology this year. And again, I understand why a lot of people really like Trump, especially now with what's happened while Biden's been in office. But what I'm really trying to get people to see is that these presidents, again, they're not the ones that are pulling the strings that really manipulate the markets, or the economy. They're up there. And again, what they want in this country is people to go back and forth between the political parties and keep blaming things and pointing fingers. And again, it's that phrase, united we stand, divided we fall. And, Trump, people, oh, shoot, we already got another commercial break. Can you stay with us for a little bit longer?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back, everybody. All right, we're back, True Seeker. It is the final 30 minutes of the show, and Tara's been nice enough to stick with us for about 2 hours now. And
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the program. I'm really learning a lot.
Okay. Well, I don't mean to overwhelm you, because a lot of people, this information can be overwhelming and they don't care for it because it's math and numbers. But to me,
I think it's important that because we have different perspectives, so we can unite them together. Because like you guys, I was thinking you guys crunch the numbers and I'll show you what's going on the ground, because you guys are able to see the things I can't. I can just point my camera and be like, guys, this is the raw footage of what's coming in. Let's figure this out together.
Indeed. And just for a heads up on where you're going this weekend, March for Our Lives. That adds up to 203. It's on the day leaving 203 days left in the year. And it's exactly 203 days after Joe Biden's birthday. And that's you learn this knowledge. You just kind of see that's the way they line up the events day after day. And it's all numerical ritual. When you go out there this weekend, what are you hoping to achieve, or is it mostly just about documenting and hearing people's perspective?
It's mostly about documenting and hearing people's perspectives. The theme is going to be with gun control. I am interested to hear people's different solutions. I don't, I'm not a fan of doing red flag laws or things that I feel like will chip away from our Second Amendment, because otherwise, New Zealand, for instance, passed some of the strictest gun control laws after the Christchurch shooter, and you have like Australia similarly has very strict gun laws, and then you have lockdowns happen, and we all saw how people were being treated there. So it's the other side of the sword. So I'm out there looking for solutions, and so that's why I'm out there trying to talk to as many people as I can from any kind of perspectives. And then even with searching for these different solutions, there are different things I'm able to connect the dots from one city to another. Like an interesting example was I was interviewing a person in Times Square about, like, I was talking to a colleague about Antifa, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I can get anybody to talk about Antifa. And a bicycle driver goes, I can talk about Antifa, and he starts talking about how you can identify him with a red handkerchief from what he saw in Central Park. And then I was accused of being this one girl who had a red handkerchief on January 6th. And so she had pulled the Pelosi sign. So people were tagging me and informing the FBI that was me. So that's why I remember her very vividly. And so I started going back through footage to see if I could see anybody else with like red handkerchiefs. But that's not something I would have known unless I had talked to a bicycle driver over in Central Park that day. So it's interesting connecting the pieces of different events and perspectives from one city to another.
Absolutely. Out of all your adventures so far, what have been some of the more memorable or powerful moments?
I was the in January 2021, when I was attacked by Antifa. That was a big moment in terms of knowing not where my limits were, but knowing that that I wasn't going to be backing down, because it was horrifying for me, not something I ever wanted to experience or would want to experience in the future. And I had continued to go out to events, and that wasn't the only time I had been physically assaulted by Antifa. During even that MLK Day protest that I had described, the one person almost pushed me off the edge of the Brooklyn Bridge onto the oncoming traffic. So,
Oh, wow.
So I've had some pretty interesting experiences that have threatened, my life. But the fact that I'm still going out there, like, I don't know, maybe the way I even process that as a trauma, I want to dedicate this to a purpose. And I just feel that it's important to be getting this information out there. And that's why I've been able to continue doing what I'm doing. And it seems like more that I'm attacked, the stronger I've become, and more willing I've been to getting the truth out there. So that's why I think that is why when anybody criticizes me, I'm always very welcome to criticism on how I can improve as a person, how I can improve my work, and then also like opening my perspectives, because like I don't know everything, and I think that if we're able to connect all these dots, that's when we'll be able to come up with some sort of way that, like you were saying, the people that are in office, that they are puppets. And that's why, like, is it going to be a solution for me to get into office in order to become the solution? I might stay on as the outsider. I'm not willing to trade my soul to be in the inside, but I think you need to still like proceed through with it. So we'll see.
Indeed, stay on your path, and if we ever see that you became a politician, we'd say, well, see, persistence and hard work, and I guess there is some room for some honest people. So, yeah, you're definitely.
We'll get you into office too. We'll get you into office too. So that way we have more honest people there.
Yeah. It's probably not going to happen, but hey, I wouldn't mind being in there. I would use my podium a lot if I was in office. So
yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, the concept of office even just represents something that is not necessarily a political office. Like, I used to compete in the Miss America system, and a big, like, my crowns are right there in the background. And so a big part of that, of the reason I was even competing before, is the platform it gave me and the ability to speak on the topics that were, for me, was mental health. And I was a proponent for mental health in my community. And so it puts you in that position where people will listen to you. So if that's extolling that type of influence. So even if I say the word office or crown or anything, it's just like, we need to have people who are willing to try and make this world a better place. And it might be an uphill battle, it might be an impossible battle, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight the battle.
Absolutely. Okay, so from beauty pageants to On the Ground with Tara, could you have ever imagined this?
No, not whatsoever. Not whatsoever. It's not something. This is why I don't really plan my life too far in advance anymore. Even this past week, I've been at bedside of my best friend and co-host. We have a podcast together, the TNA Show, and he's currently fighting for his life in the hospital, facing kidney failure at 38. And so it's this week. I remember leaving Houston and Texas and be like, okay, my heart needs a break from being in Uvalde, being in Buffalo. So my heart will have a break when I get here. And then now to be bedside to my best friend facing this. So, every week opens a different chapter and a different experience that I'm just, I'll take this as growth, and hopefully it will make, me stronger, him stronger, especially. And he's vlogging the entire thing. So I'll shout him out, Adam Francisco on YouTube, but he's using his platform now to be informing people to go and get, healthcare that they may be neglecting. And the reason why, like, he's in the position he is now is because he didn't get his blood work done when he really should have, to the point that now he's having kidney failure. So instead of being quiet about his experience, he's actually telling people, like, hey, look at me. I'm in this position. This could be you. Do what's necessary to keep your health out there. And that's why he's really exposing his heart and soul out online, hoping to inspire people to prevent them from being in a position that he's now facing.
I got to share with you something that I find so interesting about this. So, because I met you, I was checking out your channel, and then of course you do a lot of work with Adam. So then I checked out his channel as well. As you can see, I'm subscribed, and then right after I started watching your guys' work, then I see his update about his health, and my sweet lady, she's a doctor, and she's actually been really into his videos and following his health updates. And she's like, "Isn't this so funny, Hubbard, that you have been taking too much ibuprofen your whole life, and now
Oh
here's
my
this
God.
man who's having this kidney thing, and it looks like he overdid it with ibuprofen."
Hmm.
And what's weird is when I got off the plane, when I got back from New York, almost immediately I got really sick and I had severe pain. And the doctor thought I had food poisoning, but somebody gave me colloidal silver, and one of the side effects is it can attack your kidney. But I had this severe kidney pain like I've never had before when I got back from New York. So that was interesting. And then this happens, and I look at this as another synchronicity. I mean, I'm really sorry this is happening to him, but what's funny is what you just said is I haven't been to the doctor since I was 22, but I actually was making calls today to try and get a physical and a checkup. And what I'm finding out is that like everyone's booked out at least 3 months in this little town I live in. So I'm gonna have to wait a while. But because of what happened to him, I'm like, I should go in and get checked up because just listening to his story. I mean, and he's right. He said it exactly. He's like, guys, we don't like to go to the doctor. We don't get our health checked out. And he's like, if I could go back, I would have got my blood work done sooner and maybe did a little something more preventative before it got this bad. So again, I'm really sorry that's happening to him. By the way, you guys, for all the people out there, if you're looking for somebody to support in the truth community, Adam Francisco right now is in the hospital. He could probably use a donation as well. And he's good friends with Tara. But if you want to share a little bit more about you and Adam, please.
Yeah, actually, so how Adam and I had met in New York years and years ago, and so we just kept in touch on Facebook. And then he was the only person who defended me online when everybody was attacking me for saying that BLM is a domestic terrorist organization. And so he was already doing YouTube, and then so when we hung out, I the vitriol that was going on online, it made you afraid to go out in public as a Trump supporter. So you were afraid that like that online words would translate to real world violence. So I told him, I was like, we should wear Trump hats and just and be Trump supporters out loud, out loud. But yeah, so we just filmed ourselves walking in at tourist locations wearing our Trump hats and asking people their political opinions. And that's really how it started, with doing on the ground, like our first episodes. So we teamed up doing that. And then now we have a podcast where we interview, really our podcast is mostly politically based, where we have a lot of people who are running for office, but also people who have different experiences. Like we interviewed a person who's spending the rest of their time traveling when they were diagnosed with cancer, and so a lot of lifestyle content as well. And now, like with his experience going through now, like his, I was like, are you going to not do YouTube about it? And he's like, I've always worn my heart on sleeve, and I'm hoping that my story can inspire others to also get the care, like not to neglect themselves, and to realize that even if we're in our 30s, we think we're young and healthy, that's not always the case. So be proactive about your health, and something as simple as a blood panel can tell you what predispositions that you have. And so, because if he had done a blood panel way earlier, what he's going through now could have been postponed at least some odd years, even if it's 1 year more, but like 10 years or however long, that time is very, very precious. So, but I'm very grateful that he has an uphill battle, because he's a walking miracle. Because like when medical professionals tell him that how are you walking, they actually mean how are you alive. So he's a walking miracle, and I'm very thankful. He's very thankful to have that uphill battle, because not everybody is so fortunate to even have a battle.
Indeed. And I did see in his update that the doctor told him he could still have a long, healthy life. So that's good. And what's funny is one of the gentlemen who's out there watching right now, he doesn't have either of his kidneys. He's on dialysis, but he's still out pounding pavement, and he just got on public access TV teaching about Gematria. So Adam will definitely still be able to do his thing.
Oh, absolutely. He was planning on doing doing more political content and videos. He actually, I was with him when I took him to the ER on Sunday. And so when we were in the ER, he asked, they told him you're going to need a blood transfusion like right now, because he was down to a third of the blood necessary for anybody to live. And he's like, where does the blood come from? Because I don't want vaccinated blood. It has to be unvaccinated. And I'm like, oh my God, Adam, like at this point, I'm like, hysterical emotionally in my head, but keeping calm on the outside because I can't freak him out. I'm like, just take the damn blood. But he's like, because I'd rather not have any blood than have vaccinated blood. So he's still sticking through. The doctor's like, this is not how it works. But he's still plowing through with his beliefs and creating content for his on the ground coverage as well.
Right. And he also had a good message. He said he might have been a goner had he not taken good care of himself. He's always been about fitness and exercise. He did admit that he probably could have ate a little bit better. But again, that's a reminder why you got to take care of yourself, because, it helps. And in all likelihood, it's what saved his life. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I would love to get you and Adam back on to share more about your story, because I really do like what both of you are doing. And it's awesome seeing you both out there pounding pavement. And you guys are different than most Trump supporters, that's for sure. And,
it's probably because we weren't originally Trump supporters. Like both of us have very, very liberal backgrounds and still liberal beliefs. There aspects that would make me conservative, but I guess we didn't really fit into the cookie cutter idea of what a Trump supporter is.
Indeed. And I think a lot of people have made the same transition that you and Adam have, because what used to be, we're all around the same age. You're around 30 years old?
Mm-hmm. A little older, but
a little older. Okay. And I think I heard Adam say he's almost 39. I'll turn 39 in July. So again, I mean, the Democratic Party's transitioned a lot from what it was. When I was coming up, it was the party that stood against war and against, essentially abusive prison sentences and the kind of things that were easy to say, like, yeah, I don't want to be any part of that, but they've become something much different. So
yeah, absolutely. I asked my dad, I'm like, why were we all Democrats? And he's like, I thought we were, Democrats were the good guys. But now with everything going on, they're just trying to make you hate America. And he's like, I love America and I'm proud of America. Like, can any of us, like, of course, there's always improvements that need to be made. But that's the beauty of even human nature, is the progress that we make as people, as a society. And so, I regret deleting my like a month's worth of posts I had in June, because those were my first drafts of my thoughts. And I would have liked to have been able to read back those thoughts and compare to what I'm writing now and see the improvements I've made. So that's why we have to keep, revisions, like these statues that are around, like they put them into a museum, don't tear them down. Like, and that begs the question of, like, when one society is coming in to take over another, they get rid of their history. We should never be getting rid of our history.
Indeed, 100%. So, well, live and learn. So you know what not to do in the future. Tara, we're getting near the end of the show. Is there any other ideas or thoughts you'd like to get out there to the audience who's new to you tonight?
Thanks, guys. You're new to me. I'm new to all of this. So this is definitely, like, all the information, Zach, that you've been giving me. Like, one of the guys, Richard, also sent me a long list of links that I'm definitely I got my homework cut out for me, because I definitely want to learn as much as I can and be able to make well-informed opinions, because my opinions are only going to be as good as the information I have. So I really appreciate it, actually, when people send me content and advise me which way to go, because, like, I try to keep as much of an open mind and learn as much as I can. So even just, I feel like very blessed to have met you and for you to be exposing me to all of this information and to this community. So I just want to say thank you guys very much for having me on. You guys can follow me on social media. It's at Tara PoAm. And because I was formerly Polish American Brotherhood, which, Zach, you also helped me pick the new name. So thank you. And so follow me on social media and feel free to send me links and everything. I try to read as much as I can, and I will continue being out there to show you guys a lot of the live streams and on the ground coverage. And even if you don't like, not everybody likes the people that I interview, but I do encourage people to still listen to everything that's around, because that's the only way. If we get all the pieces of the puzzle, are we ever going to make that complete picture?
100%. So many people just want to be in an echo chamber, and it's not healthy. It's why we're so stuck and so divided and so polarized. So and I see that just watching the work you and Adam been doing, and it's exactly what we need. So you guys are a breath of fresh air. For donations, is there a preferred method of donation? I see you have multiple ways. Is there one way that's better than another?
I prefer Venmo or Cash App because then it doesn't take the fees away. When we get super chats, of course, like YouTube takes a nice chunk of that away. So whenever it's direct, Cash App or Venmo is always the best. I do have a Patreon that I was listening to your advice that you were giving to Rambo earlier. So that's advice that I definitely need to apply to my channel as well. I've got maybe like 3 subs on followers on Patreon, but I do plan on putting more content out there right now. Like with building the channel, a lot of my content is going to be out there for free for whether people support or not. Supporting my work will enable me, of course, to be doing more. And so, of course, like I greatly appreciate any contributions and support for the work that I'll be having.
Sure. If you can figure out a way in your schedule to have a certain block of time each week and that be exclusive content for your Patreons, I think you'll see that grow by quite a bit. So
Absolutely.
people like a live stream and a discussion with the content creator. So if you can work something like that, you'll probably see a lot of growth on your Patreon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Do you know how to put like an exclusive video, like make it on YouTube but make it show up just on Patreon? Are you familiar with that?
Make it show up on YouTube, but only on.
It won't show up on YouTube, but it will show up for your people on Patreon.
Oh, okay, yeah. There was some of the different settings to be uploading. I saw that as an option. But if I have trouble, you'll get a text message from me for instructions.
All you have to do is just put your video on unlisted, and then in Patreon you just link it there, and then it becomes a Patreon exclusive video.
Oh wow, that's such a nice connection between the platforms. I like that.
Yeah, it's real easy once you get it going. And again, just if you have that weekly scheduled time slot so people know when to tune in with Live with Tara or whatever you call it, I think you'll see a good deal of growth. So
I had put my first my first on the ground docu-series really was the border coverage, and then so now I've been working on the footage from Uvalde, which is I've organized it into really to me 5 videos. I think what I might end up doing is first debuting them on the Patreon and then eventually releasing it to YouTube, but that might be a good approach to drive people to the Patreon. So guys, thanks so much for supporting my work. It's what's gonna help me keep going on the ground.
Indeed. And for a lot of people have been sending me super chats tonight. I'll look up what my tally is, whatever that is. I'm just going to send that to you and Rambo tonight. I appreciate both of your contributions a lot. And,
Zach, you're so kind. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for coming on and spending 2 hours with us. And again, next time we have you back, I'd love for you to bring your friend Adam.
Absolutely.
And send him our well wishes. So appreciate you very much. Do you want to stay for the final minutes? I was going to take a call and get some feedback, or if you got to wrap it up, I know it's getting late on your end of the country. So
I'll let you do the closing, so that way your audience can have you to yourself. Okay. But I definitely feel like the last 2 hours has been very, very generous, and I appreciate it so much, Zach.
All right, Tara. Well, keep up the great work. Looking forward to your content this week.
I'll see you later.
DC. All right. You have a good night.